Evening, folks. I'm hoping that you're going to be able to see and hear me, but I'm not 100% sure because it's been ages since I've done this on the old YouTube. So I need you to tell me in the chat if you can see me and if you can hear me, because I have no concept and my headphones are broken, so I can't monitor myself. So I have no idea if you can hear me. We are flying fully blind. Can see and hear. Perfect. Well, hi everybody, let's talk about the OGL. There I was, lying in the bath. Everything was good. I was listening to my Mistborn audiobook. I was enjoying my evening, and then my phone pings, and oh look, Wizards of the Coast put out a new thing on D&D Beyond, and it's starting the OGL playtest. Gah! Right. This whole January has been the longest month of my entire life. This whole mess has been incredibly stressful. So, let's talk about the new OGL that's just dropped. I haven't really read it. I skimmed briefly, and I was like, oh, let's just live stream this so I don't have to go through this pain alone. All of the overlays and stuff, these are my Twitch overlays, so none of the chat is going to be coming up here, wherever it is. But it's fine. We got it. Right. Okay. So let's switch over to this. Starting the OGL playtest. So this was posted an hour ago on the D&D Beyond site by Kyle Brink, who's the lead executive, chief executive of D&D, the person at the top, the one that replaced Ray. For over 20 years, thousands of creators have helped grow the TTRPG community using a shared set of game mechanics that are the foundation for their unique worlds and other creations. We don't want that to change, and we've heard loud and clear that neither do you, so we're going to change it. So we're going to do two things. I'm going to be sassy and at the end of my rope for this entire thing, so just bear with me. Normally, we're much more cheery. So we're doing two things. We're giving the core D&D mechanics to the community through a Creative Commons license, which means they're fully in your hands. Sounds good on paper. Might not be so. If you want to use quintessentially D&D content from the SRD, such as Owlbears and Magic Missile, OGL 1.2 will provide you a perpetual, irrevocable license to do so. Again, surface of it sounds great. I have my doubts, and we'll get into that once we start looking at the actual OGL. Creative Commons is a non-profit dedicated to sharing knowledge, and it's developed a set of licenses to let creators do that. The Creative Commons license we've picked, which note they don't tell you which one they have picked, because there are many and they'll let you do a bunch of different stuff, and they've picked one, but they don't tell you which one it is. Let's just give everyone these core mechanics. Forever, because we don't control the license, releasing the D&D core rules under the Creative Commons will be a decision that can never change. That in of itself, on the surface of it, not a bad thing. Not down with the idea that they haven't mentioned which Creative Commons license it's going to be, but it's a tiny nugget of something that could potentially turn into something. Believe it when we see it. So let's talk about OGL 1.2 and the important ways it's different from 1.0a. First, it allows us to address hateful content. Could have done that by updating 1.0a. Secondly, it only applies to published TTRPG content, including VTTs. I feel like VTTs are a big push that they were going to have. That seems like a really big concession to be making. Third, the license specifically includes the word irrevocable. So they're really going in on the fact that because the word irrevocable wasn't in 1.0a, despite Perpetual being there, that is why they're able to change it. What's not in here? There's no royalty payment. Good. Should never have been there at all. No financial reporting. Good. Should never have been there at all. No license back. No registration. No distinction between commercial and non-commercial. That in it itself could be a problem potentially. Nothing will impact any content you've already published under 1.0a. That will always be licensed under 1.0a. Your stuff is your stuff. There's a link at the end to note where you can download the PDF for the proposed 1.2 along with supporting documents for your review and feedback. Before you scroll down and grab it, let me give you some more details on what's in there. protecting D&D's inclusive play experience. As we've said before, content more clearly associated with D&D, like the classes, spells, and monsters, is what falls under the OGL. I'm pretty sure that if I feel like they might be given all the rules that you could use to make a class in the Creative Commons, so you could just remake all of the classes with different names, but we'll get into that. You'll see that OGL 1.2 lets us act when offensive or hurtful content is published using the covered D&D stuff. We want an inclusive, safe play experience for everyone. This is deeply important to us, and 1.0a didn't give us any ability to ensure it. See, the problem is that they could have just added this to 1.0a. It didn't need an entire new license separating it off. I'm so angry. It's fine. 1.2 will only apply to TTRPG content, whether published as books, as electronic publications, or on virtual tabletops. Nobody needs to worry if it applies to anything else. It doesn't. Deauthorizing the 1.0a. We know this is a big concern. Yeah, it's the main concern. It's the only concern we have. The Creative Commons license and the open terms of 1.2 are intended to help with that. One key reason is we have to deauthorize. It's still up in the air whether you can. Don't believe that you can. We can't use the protective options in 1.2 if someone can just choose to publish harmful, discriminatory, or illegal content under 1.0a. And again, any content you've already published under 1.0a will still always be licensed under 1.0a. See, the thing is, I'm pretty sure that, now I'm obviously not a lawyer, right? But if someone were to start slapping around D&D IP, so the stuff that is product identity in the 1.0a, which is the stuff that is harmful to their brand, if someone were to take that and start using that in a hateful way or like damaging way to the brand, I'm sure there is already legal kind of protections that would allow them to swoop in and be like, hey, you're doing this thing that damages our brand. The whole point of the product identity is to separate it away from their brand and for it to just be the mechanics. Like, you could take everything in the 1.0a SRD, make something hateful with it, and it could still not look anything like D&D and could bring no harm to their brand, even regardless of what you published. Like, I'm sure there must be some way for them to protect their branding without having to do this. And then we've got very limited license change allowed. Only 2 sections can be changed once 1.2 is live. How you cite wizards in your work and how we contact each other. We don't know what the future holds or what technologies we will use to communicate with each other, so we thought these 2 sections needed to be future-proof. For completeness, let's sum up what else is in 1.2 and supporting documents. Virtual tabletop policy will continue to support VTTs. Ownership disputes. You own your content, you don't give wizards any license back, or any ownership disputes, you can sue for breach of contract and money damages versus holding up products other players are waiting for while we sort it out. No hateful content or conduct. If you include harmful, discriminatory, or illegal contact or engage in that conduct publicly, we terminate your 1.2 license out of content. I'd be interested to see what their criteria for harmful or discriminatory is. Create a product badge. You'll have the option to include a badge on your OGL works. Once we get feedback on the badge, we'll create a guide on how to display it. The badge is about the only thing that I don't have a problem with, because for years, for the last 23 years, we've all been using a variety of badges to say, hey, this is compatible with the Dragon game, but we can't explicitly say D&D, so we have to use a whole bunch of other language to do it. So the concept of the badge, I'm fine with. Overall, what we're going for here is good faith creators on the same level of freedom or greater for things in the Creative Commons to create TTRPG content that's been so great for everyone while giving us the tools to ensure the game continues to be ever more inclusive and welcoming, yada, yada, yada. Let's go through some comments real quick. 1.0 never licensed what's his copyrights and trademarks. No, it did not. That was all in the product identity. This terrible backdoor control OGL and anything can be deemed as harmful to them. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about the harmful area. Like, I don't think any rational person goes, oh, they want to make it so that people can't do heinous things. That's great, but give us specifics. Because otherwise you can just be like, you're doing harmful things because you speak out against us, so we're just going to pull the plug on you. It's going to be a long night. BWS Solder gives €22. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the fantastic PF2E content. You and Nonat have been absolutely instrumental for me as a WotC refugee fleeing to the PF2E side. In that case, hopefully tomorrow's video will be really helpful. I've got a getting started guide for PF2 coming tomorrow that kind of walks you through the very basics of the core gameplay loop, and then is like, hey, if you've never played TTRPGs before, here's what you should probably go and buy. If you're a player, here's your buying path. If you're a GM, here's your buying path, and then a whole bunch of links to a load of useful stuff. Right then, so let's have a look at the draft of 1.2. So, introduction to system reference document 5.1. Many ways to create D&D content is available for you in many ways. The core D&D mechanics, which are located at pages 56 through 104, 254 through 260, and 358 through 359 of the system reference document 5.1, but not the examples used on those pages. I don't know what they mean by that, are licensed to you under the Creative Commons Attribution for International. Oh, so they do tell you what Creative Commons, so that is something at least. This means that Wizard will not be placing any limitations at all on how you use that content. The termination clauses are here too vague. WotC can potentially sift through third-party content and label anything as obscene, terminating the license. Absolutely. We've seen it with some queer content on DM's Guild has been pulled in the past, and there's been big uproar about that. New 1.2 doc seems far less confusing and more straightforward to read. That's a start, at least. Yeah, hopefully. Our copyrights in the other content included in the SRD are licensed to you under the Open Gaming License 1.2, which is included later in this PDF. Use of D&D content in virtual tabletops is allowed on the terms of Wizard's virtual tabletop policy. Let's click this link and see whether it gives us something. Of course it just goes to Wizard's regular page. That is going to be a bit... I'm just going to skip forward because I want to see whether the VTT policy is in here. Yes, it is. So we'll get to that and we'll read that, because that's going to be being like, oh yeah, you can use VTT stuff. Don't worry, you're still going to be able to use it. But then given really draconian terms for what you can use it could be a death knell. Jared says that's because you can't copyright the content. They're not graciously giving you anything. I 100% agree, but the reality is you can sue anyone for anything at any time. So for a lot of us that are making third-party content, it's been easier to use the OGL than risk the litigation, because I don't have the money to fight Hasbro in court. Even if I would win, I'd be bankrupt long before I could get to that win. So the OGL has always been a kind of, well, I know we might not necessarily need it. Like, I don't think, off the top of my head, really any of the side quest issues copy the specific expressions of the SRD anywhere, but we still include OGL for it because I don't want to get sued. Right, use of D&D content in streaming, fan art, cosplay, and other fan content is permitted and described in the fan content policy. That's always been the case. And I think that they really leaned in on, oh, don't worry, that is all safe, as being a bulk of some of their statements when it was never really a concern. Platforms such as D&D Beyond and DM's Guild provide additional paths to share your D&D content under different license terms. Creator badges. For content published under the OGL 1.2, you may use one of the following badges in the manner specified in the Creator Product Badge Style Guide. Christ, you need to make better, shorter names for these things. So long as you comply with that guide in using the badges, Wizard licenses you under the 1.2 to use such a badge on any of your licensed work. Notice of deauthorization. This is the big stickler point. Like, whatever else they put in here, if they continue to attempt to, as far as we're all concerned, wrongfully deauthorize the 1.08, none of this is going to fly. Like, this is the big sticking point. But we'll read through it and see what it says, because why not? This means that you may not use the version of the OGL or any prior version to publish SRD content after effective date. It's annoying that they've not given any kind of indication of what that date is, because that leaves anyone that is publishing under the current OGL stuck in this limbo where we're like, how much time, money, and resource do I devote to pushing out the OGL stuff that we have in the works, because we don't know when this license is going to come in. Like, I figure they put this out today. They plan on running it for 2 weeks, the survey. So the survey is going to end, the 2nd or 3rd of February. So we've got until the 2nd or 3rd of February at the earliest to push out as much OGL 1.0 content as we can and get that protected by that old clause. But they could still come along and try and pull the rug from that in the future, you know? Do you think if this OGL 1.2 gets smoothed out where the community is happy, it will kill things like Project Black Flag, all the MCDM rule system they're working on? Not even a little bit. All of the companies that have got their money to move to other systems, this will be the snapping point, because no one is going to want to risk a repeat of this in any way in the future when they're making business decisions, especially these companies that are operating with millions of dollars. It is not safe enough for them to do that anymore. Like, I posted about this in an update on Patreon yesterday, I think it was, after their last announcement, saying I'm going to do my best to take all of the content that I've already paid writers for and had written for 5e and put together like a swan song pair of issues to get out before 1.0a is revoked, or before the legal processes for them trying to revoke it all get started. And then once that is done, we are moving away from 5e, because it is just not safe enough to do in the current landscape. If what they've put into the Creative Commons, because I don't know whether they have yet, I don't know whether them just saying it in this document counts, but if they put stuff into a Creative Commons license and there is enough meat in what they put there to be able to make compatible content, then maybe in the future we'll make some more 5e stuff. But for now, 5e is just radioactive when it comes to being able to make safe business decisions around it. It's a nightmare. What's has shown themselves to be a rational, untrustworthy actor. No business would willingly give them work with them, knowing a dagger may be hidden behind their back at any moment. Exactly. So here we go. 1.2a. This is a license between Wizards of the Coast LLC and anyone who wants to use this licensed content in their own TTRPG. By using our licensed content, you agree to the terms of this license. As used in this license, we includes our affiliates, successors, and predecessors. Content covered, our licensed content. This license covered any content in the 5.1 SRD or any subsequent version of the SRD we release under this license. That is not licensed to you under Creative Commons. You may use that content in your own works on the terms of this license. Our unlicensed content. Only our licensed content is licensed under this license. Any other content we release or have released is not licensed. It's not licensed to under this license. That's a lot of licenses in one sentence. Your content. This is your creative contributions to your work that are not our licensed content or our unlicensed content. This license permits you to combine your content with our licensed content and distribute the resulting works as authorized by this license. Oh my god. Like, 1.0a is written in like dense legalese, but I don't know whether it's just because I've been reading it so much over the last couple of weeks that feels normal and passable, but this feels like a mess. I feel like I'm chewing through all the references to license. 1b, works covered. This license only applies to printed media and static electronic files such as EPUBs or PDFs you create for us, or as tabletop role-playing games and supplements, and in virtual tabletops in accordance with our VTT policy. So still, until we get down to the VTT policy and read through that, still some questions as to what exactly you can do with this, because static electronic files doesn't include websites. So all the sites like 5e tools, they'd only be able to use the Creative Commons version under this one. Works covered. That we've just gone over that. Your license work. To be a licensed work under this license, it must be covered work as defined in section 1b, contain both our licensed content and your content, and not contain our unlicensed content. Okay. Copyrights. We're only licensing you our copyrights in our licensed content, except under section 5a. We also grant you a trademark license to the Creative Product Badge, as further detailed in the style guide. You receive no other rights or trademarks and no rights to any other intellectual property we own. Jared says that means anything before 5.1 that has not also in 5.1 is not authorized. You can't circumvent OGL 1.0 by creating content based on a previous version. Yeah, that's a very good point. I don't understand the concessions that they've made at this point. Obviously, nothing has gone through yet, so there is no concessions. It's just we're saying we're going to make concessions. Until the concessions are in place, nothing is real. Everything is possible. But why not? Like, so much of this could have been done within the wording of 1.0a by adding just a new section that'd be like, don't make harmful stuff. Like, if we're losing the fight for any reason, we will declare you and something you did harmful and void the contract. Yeah. Any claim that will be brought only as a lawsuit for breach of contract and only for money damages. You expressly agree that money damages are an adequate remedy for such breach. You will not seek or be entitled to injunctive relief. In any such lawsuit, you must show that we knowingly and intentionally copied your licensed work, which will be impossible. Access and substantial similarity will not be enough to prove a breach of Section 3. So this is in response to the whole thing about they wanted the license back agreement in the version 2. So the whole thing is very confusing. We have 1.0a at the minute, 1.1 leaked, then 1.2 is what we have now, but in between 1.1 leaking and 1.2, we had version 2. There was a leaked version of 2. I read through it. So this whole section is about them. It's about the license back thing in the previous version, where they were like, we can take anything you publish under this license and we can publish it without having to credit you or pay you, etc. And everyone kicked off, rightly so. But this essentially says they're going to do this, can do the same thing, because you have to prove that they knowingly recreated your work, and access and substantial similarity will not be enough to prove a breach of this Section 3. So they're just being like, well, we'll start making changes. We'll make the changes that we would try and sue you for making changes to our SRD, to your work, and you can't do anything about it. Number 4, what we own. We own our licensed content and reserve all rights not expressly granted in this license. Number 5, you control your content. We already know that. Clearly indicate that your licensed work contains our licensed content under this license, either by including the full text of this license in your work or by applying the creator products badge in compliance with the then current style guidelines. Interesting that that's the way they're going for. So in the last version of this that I saw, it said that you have to identify what content you are putting out, specifically either by a different style or format or by literally a list somewhere in the book to say, here is what content from the SRD I have used. Where now it's like, don't even include the license, just stick the shiny badge on it and it'll be fine. You may permit the use of your content on any terms you want. However, if any license you offer to your licensed work is different from the terms of this license, you must include the licensed work in the attribution of our licensed content found in the preamble to the applicable SRD, and make clear that our licensed content, including your licensed work, is made available on terms of this license. I feel like this is simultaneously written in plainer English, but much less understandable English. Right. Let's speed run through here. Age and capacity to be bound. You're over the age of majority. Yeah, you have the authority to do it. You're not infringing on anything. This license isn't an endorsement. You're not doing anything illegal. Right. No hateful content or conduct. You will not include content in your licensed work that's harmful, discriminatory, illegal, obscene, harassing, or engage in content that is harmful, discriminatory, illegal, obscene, or harassing. We have the sole right to decide what content or what conduct or content is hateful, and you covenant that you will not contest any such determination via any suit or other legal action. So, just like on the surface, this is a really good thing. Like being like, we don't want this content to be used to do horrible things. Excellent sentiment. But then just it's this last sentence. We have the sole right to decide what conduct or content is harmful, and you cannot contest it or take us to court over it. So they really can just be like, we disagree with you personally. We're going to find a reason to determine that it is harmful, discriminatory, illegal, obscene, or harassing. And then we have the sole right to decide that, and you cannot contest it in any legal action or anything else. Just great. We love that. We love that for us. Modification. We may only modify the provisions of this license, identifying the attribution required under Section 5 and the notice provision of Section 9. We may not modify any other provision. We may immediately terminate your license if you infringe on any of our intellectual property, bring an action challenging our ownership of our licensed content, trademarks, or patents, violate any law in relation to activities under this license, or violate Section F, which is the hateful conduct and content. We may terminate your license if you breach any other term in this license and you do not cure that within 30 days if you fail to do the breach. And then I think this is a whole don't sue us, everything will be fine, don't sue us, we promise. Miscellaneous. We may notify you by email or physical address. We can locate for you only if we cannot locate your email or physical address after a reasonable search. Notice via a public channel is sufficient. You may provide notice to us of your email address or physical address, or any other notice by emailing oglnotices@wizards.com. Let him find you by the public. Don't give him your stuff. Like, the whole point of the open gaming license is that it's open and you don't have to give him diddly squat. Entire agreement and disclaimer of reliance. This license governs your use of our licensed content. This license consists only of the terms expressly included herein, and not any matter expressly included herein. In accepting this license, you represent them way yada yada yada. No waiver of rights, severability, governing law, and class action suit. I imagine this is going to be a standard. Hey, if you sign this and use this, you can't come into a class action. Resolve expressly through individual litigations, and has to be done by state or federal courts located in the country in which Wizards or its successors has headquarters. This is something that they tried to put in version 2, even though this is version 1.ia. This is version 1.2. God, the versions are confusing. So this is something they tried to do in the second leak, the version 2 leak. They tried to put in that you can only sue them in a court in Washington State. Which I don't know whether that's a standard thing, but as someone that doesn't live in America, seems pretty yucky. Headings and footnotes. The headings and footnotes containing this license are for reference purposes only and shall not affect in any way the meaning or interpretation of this license. Waiver of a jury trial. We and you each waive any right to a jury trial of any dispute, claim, or cause to action relating to or arising out of this license. I'm sure you do. You should seek the advice of counsel to make sure you understand this license. You agree that you had the opportunity to do so. Right, virtual tabletop policy. We support the role of VTTs. What is permitted? Using VTTs to replicate the experience of sitting around the table and playing D&D with your friends. So displaying static SRD content is fine, because it's just like looking at a source book. You can put the text of Magic Missile up in your VTT and use it to calculate and apply damage to your target. And automating Magic Missile's damage to replace manually rolling and calculating is also fine. VTT can apply Magic Missile's 1d4 plus 1 damage automatically to the target's hit points. You do not have to manually calculate and track the damage. What isn't permitted are features that don't replicate your dining room table storytelling. If you replace your imagination with an animation of the Magic Missile streaming across the board to strike your target, or your VTT integrates our content into an NFT, that's not the tabletop experience. That's more like a video game. Right. This is incredibly vaguely worded, because immediately I'm like, could they then say any VTT that has the capability to apply animated effects is therefore ineligible? Well, God damn it. May I make my own VTT owlbear token look like the one from the Monster Manual? No, we've never licensed the visual depictions of our content under the OGL, just the text of the SRD. That hasn't changed. You can create a creature called an owlbear with a stat block from the SRD. You cannot copy any of our owlbear depictions, but you've drawn your own unique owlbear or someone else did, you can use it. I don't know if owlbear is in the product identity. If it's not, then they can't keep you from using the word owlbear. It's the standard here, the licensor picks up the jurisdiction, which is usually where the headquarters are. What about OGL 1.0a? Does this policy still apply to that? Yes, you can upload your already licensed content to a VTT. It doesn't quite answer all the questions though, does it? Like, does the rest of this policy apply to that for 1.0a content? I own or operate a VTT. How does this affect me? If you are a VTT owner or operator who supports the OGL products on your platform, you have the same obligations for VTT content that any other website owner or operator has for copyrighted content under the DMCA. You say this is a conversation. Does that mean this policy can change? Yes, we need your feedback as the tabletop space evolves. Potential of VTTs is tremendous and exciting, and we don't want to harm their development. No, you want to garden them off in your own VTT. Right, so that is the OGL. Nowhere does it have the creator badge style guide. Let's click on that link and see whether we get it. No, we just get taken to the Wizards of the Coast website. So, yeah, by what we just read, the Foundry with animations on Magic would be a no-bueno. I assume so, and it's not specific enough for me. If I was Foundry, I would not feel comfortable enough with how vague that wording is to know whether the mere ability to animate an effect disqualifies you from being permitted under this policy, because I've got a feeling that they might try and sneak that in there. That this virtual tabletop policy version 1.0 very much to me seems as though here are the blanket statement. This whole thing to me very much seems as though this is our shield. This is the one that we're going to pump out into the world. This is the one that we're going to tell everybody about. And we're going to tell them all the headline information and none of the specifics. And the headline information and the specifics will end up being slightly different. And the specifics will be worse. And we'll say, oh, look at all this great stuff we're doing to make changes. We've heard you. We're changing things based on your feedback. What we're actually doing is only slightly altering things. And many things will still be just as awful. A broad interpretation of what crosses the line into video game rather than just enhancing the experience of using the spell. There are plenty of things that I would make the argument take it to being an experience more akin to a video game. So I picked up Dungeon Alchemist, which is a map making software, and in that you have the ability to kind of go in first person and kind of walk around your maps. You can import those maps, albeit top down, into Foundry and then play on them. I'm sure you could make an argument and daisy chain all those points together to be like, yeah, it's just like a video game, isn't it? You can't do that. So I don't think they can legally prevent a VTT from using animations. Interesting they dropped the waiver of good faith language. One of my friends can do an animation effect using the lights at a physical table, but it does need a bit of knowledge. Yeah, I mean, I can pick up a battery-powered light ball and then just roll it across the table. Right. The thing is, someone can't be bound by this unless they agree to it. To be clear, it doesn't mean signing the agreement. Actions can be agreement to be bound, like using this OGL. Yeah, this isn't, as far as we're currently aware, you don't have to sign up to this. You just use the SRD and make content. And by making the content, using any part of the SRD that's not covered by the Creative Commons would be an agreement to this license. Yeah, by virtue of use, you agree. Now, the problem with that is that they're still trying to deauthorize 1.0a. So they're still trying to say, no, you can't use this old license that you've had for 23 years and was supposed to be perpetual. You have to use this new license, which carries a whole bunch of other crappy riders on with it. Not sure who would agree to this. I negotiate contracts and draft them, including software licenses. It's utter rubbish. Yeah, it's a big if, because they can say anything, but saying and doing it are very different things. But because presently no part of this is in Creative Commons, as far as I'm understanding it. Page count for this particular document is 6 pages. So them saying, oh, these pages are Creative Commons only applies if this is the final version, right? But this isn't the final version. So they can say they're going to license parts of the core mechanics to the Creative Commons, but that doesn't mean they'll actually do it, you know? Does it say they can use your content like they tried to before? Not in as many words, but basically. So where are we? So in section 3.A and B, so section 3B is essentially saying if we used something that looks like your work, sounds like your work, and walks like your work, you have to prove that we knowingly, intentionally copied you as having access to it, and a substantial similarity will not be enough to prove that, and you waive any right to try and sue us. So they've taken away the explicit wording that says we can take it and do what we want with it, and replaced it with a much more implicit, oh, well, you know, the burden of proof is on you and you can't sue us. A lot moose. Deauthorizing 1.0a should be a line in the sand. This is just an on-ramp to the 2.0 version leak. This is garbage. 100% agree. Deauthorizing 1.0a is the hard line in the sand. And if they stick with the intention to try and deauthorize it, I'm sure it will end up in court. I hope it does. I hope they lose. I hope they lose everything. But that is absolutely a line in the sand. And as far as it goes, if they continue on this path and don't kind of make sure that we can keep 1.0a, ain't no way I'm using this. Right, the OGL doesn't actually do anything except provide a covenant not to sue. Exactly. Can you do a quick search for faith, please? The original 1.1 had a waiver of good faith and fair dealing. I absolutely can do a word. There is no mention of the word faith. We'll do another one for dealing and just see. Nothing for faith and nothing for dealing. So giving the core mechanics to Creative Commons is a smokescreen and distraction. Absolutely, Sam. Like, all it's doing is giving the expression of the mechanics up to Creative Commons. So you could use the expression of those mechanics, the specific verbiage that they have used. It doesn't actually put the mechanics in. So if we want to find... where are we? I have lost my page. There it is. Covenant not to sue is nothing. Companies like Paizo would crush WotC in a court if they sued them, but this small companies would be harmed. Yeah, part of me, I mean, I want them to walk the whole thing back and be like, we really screwed up. We're just you can keep 1.0a. We'll make the small positive changes like, you know, don't be an awful person and everyone can be happy. It's not going to happen. If it was going to happen, it'd have happened. So I hope that when they inevitably do dig their heels in and try and revoke 1.0a, I hope they end up in court and I hope they lose spectacularly. So let's have a look at what part of the rules they say is going to be in Creative Commons for them under this whole shenanigans. So we've got page 56 to 104. Page 56 of the SRD starts at beyond first level, so it doesn't include any classes or any ancestries. So all the mechanics of the classes and ancestries, or all the specific verbiage of the classes for ancestries and classes, isn't included in this proposed move to the Creative Commons and would be under OGL. But all the information on multiclassing is kept in. All the information on experience points, and hit dice, proficiency bonus, and the core abilities, I believe. Languages, inspiration, backgrounds. I'm sure that the core abilities are in here somewhere. I'm sure I saw them. We will find it. But if they're including the ability to multiclass, the expression of XP and hit points, hit dice, proficiency bonus, class features. So I'm thinking of this from the point of view of a third-party creator who wants to continue making 5e compatible stuff in the dark future where they've pushed through this version, but they also include some Creative Commons stuff. So the stuff that they've included in Creative Commons includes hit points and hit dice. So when I make a monster in my not D&D compatible thing in the future, I could reference hit points and hit dice. I could reference proficiency bonus. I could call class features. Now it references, when you gain first level in a class other than your initial class, you only gain some of the new classes. So it references the core classes' names in this. So I'd say the core classes' names should be fine. Anything about not being able to go back on their word in this? That's a very good point. Irrevocable license. Irrevocable, meaning the contents under this license can never be withdrawn from the license. Yeah, they're trying to make this one irrevocable. And then Jared says, because phrases and core rules can't be copyrighted, that's how you can have different Monopoly games. They're not generous. No, they're not generously giving you anything. But again, they have deeper pockets than most anyone. So the use of the OGL or the conforming of using expressions in this potential Creative Commons one is to just stop you getting sued. Like, I am confident that I could make an entire clone of 5th edition that plays exactly the same and just use different expressions, and I'm sure that legally it would be fine. But I don't have the money to prove that when they come knocking. Yeah, core class names I would have always thought are too generic. Myself and a whole bunch of other YouTubers have been having a lot of conversations about what we're going to do in terms of dealing with this problem going forward, and how we can reword things and change things. But if they, by looking at this, if they do end up putting these pages into Creative Commons, then it may be easier. So spell slots and the concept of spell slots will be in the Creative Commons. Alignment, languages, this goes up to 104, I believe. Let's double check. 104 it does. So inspiration would then be covered. Again, acknowledging that you can't copyright mechanics, but we want to cover our bases and not get sued. Backgrounds would be covered. The expression of backgrounds as having personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. All of our equipment. I do find it funny that a lot of this first chunk is just equipment, which isn't exactly the spiciest thing to be like, hey, here's all this stuff that you can have for free. Tools, mounts and vehicles, trade goods, expenses, lifestyle expenses, food, drink and lodging, spell casting, services, feats. So the ability to make feats would be possible in the future using ability scores. See, I knew ability scores were in there. Ability scores and modifiers, advantage and disadvantage. So if all of this ended up in Creative Commons, then there'd be nothing to stop you using all of these things. Again, nothing to stop you anyway. Just don't want to get sued. Proficiency bonus, ability checks, the difficulty class table would still be in there. Contests, all of that would be fine. Working together, strength checks, all of that good stuff. So it mentions that the expression of examples aren't included, but I'm not 100% sure what those are, what the examples would be. Whether it would be these breakout boxes or whether there are some other examples that I'm not seeing. Let's have a look at what else we've got. So this is all stuff on the saving throws are in there. That's good. Time and all that jazz is covered. The environment. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff, if they put this, just this section, so it includes the order of combat as well, so it includes surprise, initiative, your turn, reactions, movement and position, breaking up your move, difficult terrain, being prone, creature sizes, all of the actions would be covered under the Creative Commons, making an attack, or the expressions of the actions, making an attack, rolling 1s or 20s, unseen attackers, ranged attacks, opportunity attacks, grappling, the entire process for damage and healing, as well as death. Cover is included. dropping to 0 hit points and death would be covered. Temporary HP and knocking creatures out. Mounted combat, underwater combat, and the basics of casting a spell. So that covers us up to 104, right? So that gives us all the mechanisms that you'd used to write a spell, including cone, cylinder, cube, and saving throws, and it stops at combining magical effects. So what wouldn't be covered would be the spell lists, right? So what they'd be saying is everything from page 56 up to 104. So that's basically the core rules. The expression of the core rules of the game would become Creative Commons. Then what they're trying to gate off is the specific expressions of the core classes and the core ancestries and the spell lists. So if you're a third-party creator like me and you want to make a new class or a new subclass, all of your rules to do it, all of the verbiage that you'd use to create that new class without specifically referencing any in this should be fine. If you wanted to make a new spell, all of the kind of instructions on how to word and the specific order and verbiage of that spell are covered under the Creative Commons stuff, so you can make a new spell. Now, what they're trying to intimate in kind of their draft, the discussion part of this, is that you can't use the word magic missile. But I would argue that you could. What the OGL does is give you access to this specific expression of the thing. Magic missile, as far as I'm aware, is not part of the product identity. So that isn't covered in the same way as like Beholder is. So you can say, or you should be able to say, this character can cast the spell Magic Missile. What you can't do is recreate the Magic Missile text verbatim as it is written in this document. At least that's my understanding. If anyone disagrees, let me know. And then 256 to 260. Monsters. So this tells us what this covers: monster size, covers different types, their alignment, their armor class, their hit points, their hit dice, their size, speeds, ability scores, saving throws, skills. 260 it takes us up to. So vulnerabilities, languages, telepathy, challenge rating, special traits, actions and reactions, and legendary creatures. So again, I believe that what this is saying, let's go 358 and just have a look. 358. Conditions are covered. Cool. 358 and 359. So essentially what they're doing under this is they're taking all of the here's the rules to actually play the game, putting it under Creative Commons, and then they're taking all of the classes, characters, spells, specific feats, and monsters and saying those are in the SRD. You don't need those. Because the SRD, the license is only covering the specific expression in the SRD. And if they make all of the tools that you need to make a new creature, they're like, oh, you can't use Owlbear unless you use the open game license. I mean, I don't think Owlbear is a protected term. And if it's not, then you could use the rules that they have to make a new Owlbear or a bear owl and use the Creative Commons version to build it, and all of your specific expression of it would be fine, because the way in which having the word hit dice and having the word proficiency bonus and being able to say it imparts the petrified condition, that would all be covered under Creative Commons. So that should be fine. And again, if you made it a spellcaster, as long as you're not using Bigby's Hand or Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion, as long as you're using the generic terms that aren't product identity and you're not recreating the expression of it from the SRD, I don't think there's any reason you couldn't do it. So I'm torn, because for people like me. So a lot of what I do in SideQuest, which is my magazine, on patreon.com/Icarus_games. I'd paste the link, but I don't have all the buttons for YouTube set up on my Stream Deck. So what we do at SideQuest, a lot of that is building brand new monsters. And then over the last couple of months, we've been taking the old monsters, the SRD monsters, and rebuilding them. If the specific pages mentioned in this document were released under a Creative Commons attribution license, I would still be able to do that. I could still make a skeleton that is compatible with 5th edition and give it new stats, which is what I've been doing anyway, and publish it. And I wouldn't have to sign up for the OGL, wouldn't have to do anything involving Wizards, because that would be out in the world under the Creative Commons. I think for most people, let's have a look at... Thank you for dropping the link, Bob. Much appreciated. Attribution 4.0 International. Using it. Creative Commons public license. Give me the layman's terms, please. Where's the TLDR for this? Because I'm pretty sure they have them, right? I really thought that Creative Commons had just a... I'm an idiot. What does this actually mean? Official translations are available. Adapted material. Oh, this is a whole other license. I don't want to have to read this whole thing. If you share the license material, you must retain the following if it is supplied by the licensor with the license material. Identification of the creation's license. So you still have to tell them that you're using content from the Creative Commons version, but that's fine, because if they put it out under Creative Commons, they can't take it back. Yes, please do drop a link to the Discord. That would be very much appreciated. We have a Discord server where we've been collectively freaking out about all of the OGL changes that have been happening for a long time. Well, not even a long time. It's been 14 days since the news fully broke, and it feels like a year. Elemental, and what does this mean for writing campaigns and publishing them? If your campaign, if you mean writing a setting, then as long as it doesn't include any mechanical stuff, it's completely fine. If you mean writing an adventure, as long as the stuff that you reference in the adventure either comes from the Creative Commons section of the SRD, which is the specific pages referenced, or you don't reference anything else beyond that, then you should be fine. Like, I don't... Obviously, not a lawyer, but I would argue that you can say that there is as long as you're not mentioning like beholders, but saying like there's 4 skeletons in this room, as long as you're not reprinting the specific wording in the SRD, that's all the SRD has ever covered. As far as I understand it, all the SRD has ever covered is the specific expression as is written in the SRD. So you can say, you can reword the SRD, and in theory you are protected because the mechanical elements can't be copyrighted. The SRDs and the OGL is just there to stop you getting sued. So broadly, it might be fine. Again, 1.2 is not something I would plan on signing up for, because they still plan on deauthorizing 1.0a. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a big old no-go. But, big but, because we are still in the drafty versions of all of this absolute madness. So it's a big but. But if they push through and they publish this tomorrow, as it is, I would not sign up for the 1.0, 1.2. God damn it, there's too many versions. I would not sign up for 1.2. But I may consider using the Creative Commons attribution elements to continue to make content that is broadly still wildly compatible, because they have all of the rules in there, or in the proposed pages, all of the rules for creating classes, creating monsters, creating items, creating feats, creating backgrounds is all pretty much covered, or all the verbiage you need to create those things, not necessarily the rules to create them, but all the words that you need and the order in which you need to put them to be able to make those things exists in those pages mentioned in the Creative Commons version, so you could make compatible content without having to touch the 1.2. The problem is, until there is an official version, until it's done, none of this actually means anything, because they can put whatever they want in this. They can say whatever they want. They can say we intend to do whatever we want. But until they do it, it's all empty words. You know, like I say, I think that this document, this 1.2 draft survey, is going to be used like a shield for them to take the high level information that's in it and be like, oh, look at all the things we've changed based on your feedback, whilst disguising the fact that a lot of those things haven't actually changed. And that is my concern. What would you say needs to change in order for you to use the license? They'd need to not revoke 1.0a. I think, broadly for me, the damage is done at this point. There is, unless they turned around and said, the license that you've been using for the last 23 years is going to be protected, we're not going to change it, and it'll be protected forever. I would never be able to trust a license put out by them again fully enough to base my business around it. And that's, for me, that's what it comes down to. You know, the last 2 weeks is pulling out my hair, worrying about whether or not I'll have a business in 2 weeks. You know, just on the cusp of releasing a 200-page book filled with OGL material that I had to rush to get a version technically published to make sure it was covered by that anything you have published before is safe. And once you lose that trust, it's incredibly difficult to get it back. Jared says, I think a lot of people want WotC to acknowledge and not attempt to revoke the OGL. Absolutely. They can still update it without attempting to revoke it. Yeah, like a lot of the things they wanted to do in this, they could have done in 1.0a. They could have made these changes. They could have added some clauses to it, and it would have been fine. Will creators return, though? I think some people will return. I think if you are a creator who has made your entire living off OGL content and they give you a lifeline, I don't begrudge anyone for taking it, because otherwise you lose your business, you lose your livelihood. If you are doing it full time and supporting a family or have a mortgage or paying rent, you know, doing all of the adult things that you need money to do, and you're worried that all of that is suddenly going to go away and WotC throws you a poisoned lifeline, I don't blame anyone for taking it. I am, touch wood, in a fortunate enough position that even though the majority of my income comes from OGL related stuff, I am pretty confident that I could pivot and not become destitute. I'm fairly confident in my ability to make stuff that is system neutral, that people could still use and could still get excited about, and then make stuff for other systems and still be able to make a living off it. And certainly in the position I am in, I don't have any dependents, I don't have a mortgage, so I am willing to make that risk. I'm willing to draw a line in the sand and say, no, unless you keep 1.0a as it is, I wash my hands of you. A lot of people aren't in the position to do that, and that is a scary position to be in, and that's why I think this has caused so much anger, and it's why it's made me so angry, because there's a whole bunch of folks who are just dangling out in the ether, waiting to hear what the billion-dollar company has decided to do about their 10 grand a year business. It's infuriating. Oh well, I don't think we're ending. We've been going for an hour. We've read through the 1.2 draft version of the OGL and looked at what parts of the SRD it covers. You should be able to scrub back in the timeline and watch that. Bob says, and then create under the org. Exactly, that is broadly my intention. Short term, certainly for the next 2 weeks, I want to get 2 issues of SideQuest written in the next 2 weeks using all the stuff that's already been created, because a lot of people have put a lot of work into the stuff that has already been written that was planned to be put out over the coming 5 or 6 months, And I don't want those people's work to go to waste, but I also don't want to devote the resources to decouple it from the OGL. So we're going to go and take all of that stuff and essentially like fire it into a couple of issues and get them published, even if it's a couple days apart and a little bit early, and it means we have a bit of a dry spell on Patreon. I'd rather get them out so that content gets its chance under the sun. Because the writers that have written that stuff deserve to have it published and deserve for it to be protected and not have to worry about it. In terms of going forward, I am looking at ways to start writing content for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I've been talking to some of the folks that work for Paizo about getting up to speed on the kind of skills aspect of writing for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. That's something I want to do, and bring the writers who have written for me on SideQuest along for that, give them the opportunity to learn the skills necessary to write for another system, because I know a lot of them currently only write for 5e, and they're worried about what their livelihood is going to be, because a lot of people have been cancelling their 5th edition products because we don't know what's going on. And from the entire spectrum of third-party creators, people are afraid and panicking. So my big concern is making sure as many of the people that I work with and as many of the creators that submit content to me and do work for me have got some kind of lifeline to get out of this. So next month, we're probably going to do a big old kind of Pathfinder 2nd Edition rules jam where we learn how to write for PF2 and learn the mechanics of the system, and can cross-train everyone over that wants to be cross-trained on that. And then going forward, it'll be system-neutral content in SideQuest, Pathfinder 2nd Edition content in SideQuest, and then once the Orc license come out, we'll look at that and see whether that's applicable. If Wizards push through with this specific version and they don't change a word, and they do put those 3 sections of the core rules under the Creative Commons license, I am like 70-80% sure that I can make 5th edition compatible content using only the stuff in the Creative Commons and publish new 5th edition material in SideQuest going forward. And if that is available and it's under the Creative Commons, I will continue to do that because I don't have to be associated with Wizards for it. But at the moment, we're still just kind of dangling in limbo because this is a proposed draft. There is no hard date for it, so it's all just words. None of it means anything until it means something. Chicane says, "Hi Anto, what's the best way to get the SideQuest book, please?" You can get the PDF on my Drive-Thru RPG store right now, and I just today sent away for the proof copy for the physical version on Drive-Thru RPG. That'll take a couple weeks to get to me, and then I have to go through and make sure that their printing file is all right, and then the printed version will go up on Drive-Thru RPG as well. People that backed on Kickstarter, their information is going to be getting sent over to our actual printers that's not Drive-Thru RPG, and all of the Kickstarter versions are going to be getting sent off to be made in the next week, and they'll be getting sent out hopefully by the end of the month. So if you pledged on Kickstarter, the books are coming very, very soon. Just need to send the big spreadsheet with everybody's addresses and information over to the printers, and then pay them the many, many thousands of pounds to print the books and send them out, and then it'll all be good. I'm glad that we got that out under the wire before any of this really kicked off and changed, because that was my biggest worry. As soon as that news dropped, I was like, I'm about to put out a book that I've spent so much money on and people have spent so much money on. It's been a long 2 weeks. Deauthorizing 1.0a is still very bad for companies like Green Ronin. If they make 4e Mutants and Masterminds, they have to replace all the language from 3.5 SRD because of the OGL version 1.0a deauthorization. Exactly, and that's another big part of why I'm firmly in camp. You cannot deauthorize this. I don't believe that legally you can anyway, but morally and in terms of where we stand on the picket line, you cannot do this, and I won't be a party to the things that you do if you do this. Hence why, there are no D&D books, no Wizards of the Coast books on my shelf anymore. They've been taken down. I wanted to destroy them, but I couldn't find a suitable way to destroy them in the dramatic fashion that both my heart and the YouTube algorithm would have demanded me to. So they've just been put into storage. I may sell them and use them to buy Pathfinder stuff. I'm kind of sitting on them waiting for a minute. But for now, they're in the dark and I don't intend to return to them. I'm very interested in how the Creative Commons portion of the content would allow us still flexibility to create for D&D 5e. Like, how far can we push the use of the core mechanics and stat blocks? So let's go ahead and go and jump back to page 56, I believe it was. And let's go desktop. Jared says, thanks for the read through, mate. Got a sub. You're very welcome. Thank you for the subscribe. So Daniel, basically everything that's covered under this Creative Commons would allow you to make a new, as far as I'm aware, and as far as my interpretation, obviously not a lawyer, but everything that I see in the Creative Commons section of the SRD, as it is suggested in this draft, again, until it's done, it's done. Everything that it says there means that you could make a brand new class, you could make a brand new subclass, background, you can make a new feat, you can make a new spell, you can make a new monster, you can make new versions of anything, because all of the specific parts of them, like hit points and hit dice, proficiency bonus, class features, all of that kind of stuff, is within the Creative Commons element. What you wouldn't be able to do is you wouldn't be able to reprint the explicit expression of the rules for the base classes, the base subclasses, the ancestries, any of the spells, or any of the existing feats, which creates a problem. It doesn't create a problem for me now. It would have made a problem. So I made a set of cheat sheets for people who want to get into 5th edition. I did a Kickstarter for it at the start of 2022 for a set of illustrated cheat sheets that laid out everything that your class could do in simple to understand language and in a much more user-friendly version than reading through a book. Under this, because that was published under 1.0a, that will be safe. But under the proposed 1.2 version, I wouldn't be able to do that because it would use expressions of elements that are in, or I wouldn't be able to do it under the Creative Commons version. I'd have to use 1.2 because it uses expressions of the rules covered in the SRD that aren't covered by the Creative Commons license. And that's another big problem I have with this. By not splitting off the rules into their own distinct document, and by saying specifically page 56 through 104, 256 through 260, and 358 through 359 are Creative Commons, that's going to create a lot of confusion, because if it was an entirely spun out document that contained all those pages, exact same words, and it was like, here, this is the Creative Commons element, that's easy to understand and look at and go, right, I know exactly what I can use, versus having to scroll through and go, right, I've got to ignore the hundreds of pages of content between these pages that I'm allowed to use and just pretend like I can't see it, even though it's in the same document. I don't think that that is the right approach. Thanks for the time to explain. I'm a freelance writer. I've just worked with Never Endings and Size Tapestry of Lives. I was planning on expanding my YouTube and business this year. Exactly. They want us to make adventures and settings and nothing else. Maybe monsters, but we still don't know what they'll think about the format of monster stat blocks. So the format of monster stat blocks is actually a really easy thing to do. So if we go to page 256 in here, 256, and let's switch to here so you can see monsters. So this is under their proposition for being included in the Creative Commons license. The section on monsters. A monster's statistics, sometimes referred to as stat block, provide the essential information that you need to run a monster. So if we were making a version of a 5th edition monster that's going to be compatible, we can reference its size, we can reference its creature type, we can reference its tags, we can reference its alignment, we can reference its armor class and hit points, its hit dice, we can reference its speed, including its types of speed, we can reference its ability scores and saving throws, its skills, vulnerabilities, resistances, immunities, its senses, its languages, its challenge rating, how much experience points it gives you. I don't know whether you can explicitly reference the proficiency bonus, but that is referenced elsewhere, so I would argue you can. You can reference its special traits, any spellcasting it has, as well as its actions, any limited use actions it has, any equipment, and also its legendary options. So you can mention all of the stuff. In terms there may be an argument that the way they lay it out on the page is part of their trade dress and thus covered by product identity, but it's easy to slightly change it. My recommendation for anyone looking at this and thinking, I want to write some monsters for 5th edition going forward, and I'm worried about the expression of that monster, let's go ahead and give me like 2 seconds, and I will pull up a version of a monster that has a slightly different trade dress based expression, and we'll see. So this is the image of a reforged skeleton warrior. This is the article series that is in SideQuest magazine that I was talking about previously. I've been going through and I've been remaking the basic SRD monsters to be more interesting, and this is the skeleton. So it is slightly different to the Wizards of the Coast version. This one isn't as different as it could be, but if we go and we find... let me find... I pasted a version into a Discord chat the other day. Let me go and grab that, because that will probably be a better example for what I'm trying to show. Skelly Bob, I need to save this. Do you want to replace it? No, I don't want to replace it. I want to rename it. Hold the phone, Skelly Bob. And then let's find our Skelly Bob, and I'll show you what I mean. Skelly Bob. We didn't give it a proper file extension. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment while we sort this. Right. So here we go. So this is something that I was whipping up and talking to some other creators about after this whole thing started blowing up, and I was like, right, we need to start thinking about how we would show a different expression of the rules, because it's the expression of them that is covered, not the actual rules themselves. So this is a different way to express a monster that's still fundamentally understandable by 5th edition people. Get rid of the ability scores, because they're largely irrelevant to monsters. Just stick to bonuses. For this, at this point I still wasn't sure what specific words would be okay to use or not. So we change AC and armor class to armor, we change hit points to health, we change speed to movement, still completely understandable. We change vulnerability to weakness, keep immunities, because it's a generic word, keep sensors, keep languages, change challenge rating to difficulty rating. We move anything that is a bonus action, because a lot of the times this upper section above actions is usually where bonus actions are contained. Spin it off into its own bonus action section, reactions, and that should be... I would have thought the trade dress and presentation of that information is different enough from an official stat block that if you were using elements taken from the Creative Commons portion of it and not referencing the specific expression of the locked off sections of the SRD, you should be fine. People that make their own versions of the character sheets, will they still be affected by this? I don't think so, because everything that you would reference on the character sheet would be covered under the Creative Commons elements of the SRD. Again, it's one of those things where ultimately anyone can sue anyone at any time for anything. So you're never 100% sure that you're covered. But if they do go through with the proposed changes and put what they say they're going to put into a Creative Commons license and do push that out, then I don't see any way in which they could try and say, oh, this custom character sheet that you've made cannot be made because you are basing it on a Creative Commons piece of information and not their unauthorized licenses or anything like that. So at this point, who knows is the answer to everything, unfortunately. But if you are a creator who makes OGL stuff, if you are a freelancer that writes for publications, if you own a third-party publishing company, I'm still not comfortable with version 1.2 and have no intentions to use it. If they do release the core rules under Creative Commons, I will look at a way to use those Creative Commons to create new content for the game that doesn't need to reference the specific expression in the SRDs outside the Creative Commons areas. But I would say, in any way that you can and as quickly as you can, either shift to system neutral stuff or find another system that will accommodate you and your audience. So for me, I was pretty lucky in that I was personally moving away from 5e for quite a while before this happened. Since early last year, I'd been making Pathfinder 2nd Edition content. I'd been talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition, how excited I was to play. My first session for my session 0 for Pathfinder was last week, and it had planned to be last week. We finished our 5e campaign over Christmas. We had a couple weeks off. Our last week off was the 4th. They dropped this information on the 5th, and then on the 11th I had my session 0 and had my first session of Pathfinder 2 in a new campaign yesterday. So I'd already kind of been priming my audience ready to make a shift away from 5e. If you don't have that capability and you have been creating for 5e for this entire time, my biggest suggestion would be look at some other systems, see if you are a content creator, see what kind of content your audience would also be interested in, start looking at other systems and start training yourself on the mechanics of another system. Maybe Pathfinder, maybe another game. I don't know what games you might be interested in or what games your particular audience might be interested in. And then in the meantime, while you're learning new skills, try and make as much system neutral stuff as possible. So a lot of the big plans I'd had for this year involve system neutral stuff. So the next big Kickstarter plan that I have is all system neutral. It wouldn't have had the OGL in it anyway. But there are OGL related projects that I had started the process of, daydreaming about and scribbling on the back of notepads that just will never see the light of day now, because, or certainly not in the form that they would have previously, because 5th edition is radioactive at the minute and it's not worth making new plans about. A Scott with Scotch says, I'm in a similar situation. I converted one group to PF2 and the other group should be completing soon and we'll be moving over to Pathfinder. One group is still 5e, but we're going fully third party. Yeah, I mean, people that still want to play 5th edition that are in, I've not personally seen anyone saying anyone should cancel their 5th edition game and stop playing 5th edition immediately. I've seen a lot of people saying, consider switching to other stuff, here are some other games. But if you're in the middle of a 5e game and all your players are enjoying it, if you can play out the rest of your game without giving Hasbro and Wizards another penny, So I don't think anyone should feel guilty for continuing to play 5e if that's what they and their players enjoy and brings them joy. And each individual person is going to have to decide how much they are comfortable giving Wizards money after this point. But if you and your players are having fun and enjoying it, that's all that matters to your group. Daniel says, pocket edition or hardcover for the Pathfinder 2nd Edition core rulebook. I prefer the hardcover purely because it's a bigger form factor. The core rulebook is a very dense book. It's got a lot of information and I appreciate having a bigger page with slightly bigger font. Makes it a little bit more comfortable to read. But all of the rules for Pathfinder are available on Archives of Nethys. So I will drop a link in the chat right now. All of the rules for Pathfinder, every mechanical element of it is available for free on that website. So if you are someone that makes content and makes third-party content and you are considering switching from 5e to PF2, all of the mechanical information that you need to digest is on that website. So you don't have to go and spend any money. Minibix says, yeah, my players are too happy to switch to PF2 and I just entered a campaign with another group that plays 5e. The pocket edition for mobility. Yeah, pocket edition for mobility is nice. I had the pocket editions of the 1st edition Pathfinder Bestiary and the Game Master Guide, and being able to carry them around is much easier than carrying it around the thick slab that is the hardbacks. But no, in terms of my overall thoughts on 1.2 and this draft of the OGL, I still don't think it's enough. I think that there's a lot that sounds like it would be good on paper, but until we see it actually implemented and get a lot of clarification on a lot of the elements, I wouldn't trust. And even then, I'm not going to trust Wizards of the Coast as far as I can throw them ever again. You know, they, in one foul swoop, completely eroded their trust base, and that doesn't just come back. For sure, one group that converted was converted all before they started. The other is just about to change anyway, so we're not sticking with 5e for that reason. Yeah, I know. I've seen a lot of people moving away from 5e in the last couple of weeks, checking out other systems. Like my Pathfinder videos have been going bananas, which is excellent. And yeah, like Amir says, it's so much uncertainty. You have to look at the Orc license. Absolutely. When the Orc license comes out, I'll be looking at that, and you know, if a lot of other game systems adopt the Orc license and start making SRDs available under that, I think that we'll end up ultimately in a much healthier place for the community, and it could end up that we have a much stronger, wider community where people play more diverse games. But the problem is, whatever happens along, in the next couple of months, there's a good chance that people are going to lose out on their jobs from this. There's a good chance that there are third-party companies that are going to choose to not pursue 5e material, make a switch, and that switch will fail. There will be people that will go, right, I'm not going to play 5th edition, I'm not going to make content for it anymore, I'm going to make my own system, and those systems will fail. That's just the law of averages. And while we might end up eventually being better off overall, there is going to be real human cost to what Wizards have done here. You know, they've kneecapped themselves in terms of trust. They've lost, up to 40,000 subscribers is the current number that's floating around as far as people have unsubscribed from D&D Beyond, which if you want to take money away from Wizards and show a direct sign of, hell no, this isn't good enough, unsubscribing from D&D Beyond is the best way to do it presently. We've still got a couple months before the movie comes out, so I'm not too gung-ho on the let's boycott the movie right now, because boycotting D&D Beyond and unsubscribing much more immediately effective. If things haven't changed by the time March rolls around and the movie's due to come out, then I'll get on the let's boycott the movie bandwagon. But in that interim period between now and when everything is okay again, this is going to suck for a lot of people, and that's on Wizards. And they're never going to care about that. Wilo says, hey, for the PF2 beginner's guide tomorrow, could you outline PF2 books in terms of content themes? ABC are core rules, depth are secondary rules, GHI. So it's set out, the way the video, it's already filmed, it's uploaded, it's ready to go. The way it's laid out is it's broken up into, hey, here are the books here are the products that I recommend you get if you're a brand new TTRPG player. Here are the books that I recommend you get if you are a player, and the order in which I would personally get them. And then if you are a GM, here are the books that I would recommend you get and the order I'd recommend you get them. Honestly, you don't need more than core books if you're playing, and at most you might want a PDF of some of the race and class editions like the Advanced Player's Guide and the new class books. Yeah. Really Sex just had a regular D&D work from the middle of last year. Now everything has been upturned and crushed. Exactly. Everyone, the most affected people are the people at the bottom of the rung, so freelancers who have no steady stream of income from any one employer. The further up the rung you go, the more insulated you are from it. But it feels like an Alderaan meme. They dropped, that leak dropped, and just 1,000 voices cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced. Fortunately, they weren't silenced, and everyone kicked up a fuss. But even with the publication of 1.2, this is not over. And the problem now is it's going to be really hard to keep up the momentum to keep the pressure up, because they've made some concessions. I've already seen a lot of kind of WotC apologists come out of the woodwork to say these are great changes, or thanks for listening, and kind of lapping up the PR spin of this. And like I keep saying, until we see it in full writing, they can say whatever they want. They still intend to deauthorize 1.0a, which they just cannot do. We still don't know exactly the specifics of a lot of these content policies, like the tabletop VTT policy and what the creator product badge style guide actually is. So there's still a lot up in the air that we don't know. I've been playing since 81. This royally stinks. It does royally stink. But yeah, I don't think I've got anything else to add. We'll hang out for like 10 more minutes and we'll turn it into something positive. So if you've got any questions, we'll go specifically for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, because that is what I am moving to, and that's what a lot of my content has been for the last couple of weeks. So if you've got questions about PF2, throw them in. We'll hang out for kind of 10 minutes, like decompress from the rage of having to deal with more WotC bullshit, and then we'll call it a night. Jason says, you know what I honestly wish would happen? I wish the community would outright revolt and start a project to rewrite the SRD in totally new expression, only to publish it under CCO. I reckon that's what Kobold Press's Black Flag is going to be. There was allusions in the initial announcement to it. It linked to a page to sign up. On that page to sign up, it has since been changed, I believe, but I'm certain somewhere on that first day it referenced that Black Flag intended to be 5e compatible, and the impression I got was that they're going to go, fine, we'll write our own SRD with Blackjack. So that's what I think we will see. I think we will see something that makes a fundamentally compatible product under a different license. What's he saying something about OGL and 1D&D, the entire community? It's a trap! But not everyone is going to be happy and everyone isn't going to get what they want. No, absolutely. No one's going to get what they want out of this situation. Not a single person is going to end up with exactly what they want by the end of this. Wizards of the Coast don't get to bring in all the unilateral changes that they hope to sweep under everybody's nose because the leaks happened. All of the third-party publishers have to rapidly adjust their plans, and even if it means that they might ultimately be better off for it, like companies like Paizo and Kobold Press have had, massive influx of new people and sales in the short term, but there will be long-term plans that have to be adjusted, and that costs money in a business that size. Small freelancers are losing out on work, mid-size, slightly larger, approaching mid-size companies are having to throw plans around. I've been sat in a holding pattern for the last 2 weeks, basically unable to do almost anything because there's been no concrete information, and every day has brought new news. Like every single day I've sat down and something new has happened. I've just been like, oh my god, I just want to sleep. So no one's going to get what they want from this. It's not a you won and so did we situation. It's just everybody loses and it sucks. Scotch with Scotch says, what's your favourite class build as a PF2 player? I'm currently playing a Thaumaturge Goblin. Thaumaturge, by far and away my favourite class. It's so interesting. It's just like playing as Van Helsing, which is amazing. Goblin is a lot of fun. I'm not as invested in the ancestries as I am in the classes. Like I'm a bit more ambivalent to ancestries as a whole, but Thaumaturge is hella cool. Fortunately, I've already bought 2 hardback PF2 books and like 100 PDF books from Paizo. Excellent. I do have a question, but I want to say thank you. I picked up a Foundry bundle of the beginner box based on one of your videos, unboxing a physical version. That's awesome. The Foundry integration for PF2 is amazing. I was running my first session of PF2 over the last couple of days. Yesterday, I don't know what day it was, in the last couple of days, and I've been amazed at the integration. Once you get settled in the Foundry, I would recommend going and looking up. There's a couple of modules for adding NPCs that act as merchants, so you can pull up an NPC and essentially they have an inventory of all the stuff they have in their store and the players can buy it from them, and it makes the whole like shopping experience much easier. I believe there is one of those for the beginner box. I think there is an Otari based merchant in there. Super cool, really easy to miss, but definitely worth looking into. You can't Pathfinder something released under 1.2 like happened with 1.0a. Yeah. I used to publish stuff for 3E and 3.5 back when drive-through RPG was a thing. Been looking to get back into it, only to run into this debacle. Yeah, it's been a mess. I was going to build my business this year, publishing adventures. It'd be difficult to do system-neutral stuff, I think, without mentioning roles for challenges. So for adventures and stuff, it's actually a little bit easier than you might think. So you can reference a lot of generic monsters because those are just words. And then when it comes to, like, if you wanted them to do a stealth check, like a DC 15 stealth check, just be like a moderately difficult sneaking check or sneak. You know, you can get around a lot of the verbiage of the checks really easily. Any good third-party creators for 2nd edition Pathfinder? Yes, Roll for Combat. They make the Battle Zoo line of products. And it's Stephen Glicker and Mark Seifter, who is the lead, or was the lead designer on Pathfinder 2, Mark was. And their stuff is really cool. Absolutely worth checking out. I will grab a link to them, actually, because we're ending this on a positive note. So let's share the love. Roll4combat.com. Yep, that's the one. Is that the one? Where is the store button? Let me make sure I'm sending you to the right place. Battlezoo.com. That's what we want. Great place for third-party stuff. They've got bestiaries and new ancestry stuff and a whole bunch of cool stuff. What's the difference between Pathfinder large books and the Pocket Edition? I believe that the Pocket Edition is literally the page is just shrunk down. I think the text and the page numbers is all the same. At least it was in 1st edition. I don't have any Pocket Editions of 2nd edition. But in 1st edition, certainly it was just they shrunk the page down physically. So everything on it was smaller, but the layout was still exactly the same. Look at Pathfinder Infinite and Roll for Combat. Yeah, exactly. What is the name of those shop modules that you can recall? I will load up my Foundry and I will tell you. If you just give me a second. Because they are really cool. I only discovered them today. So let's go through my Foundry and find them. It's called PF2E, a shopping experience. And that will give you a set of pre-stock shops to make the act of spending gold more enjoyable and memorable than looking up the list of all common items. And it's broken up so that there is a different shop for each level that has level appropriate stuff in each of those. In them, it's located in the compendium and you have to drag them all into the actors to get it to work, but it works perfectly. I can share pictures to post. Yes, go ahead. Drop them in the mod chat, and I can post them. I don't know whether can I post. Engage with your audience. Start a Q&A. Start a poll. I don't know if I can. Oh, I can drag them into my browser, can I? Of course I can. Yeah. Pathfinder is the 2nd largest TTRPG in the market, right? I don't think anyone has solid numbers to be able to confirm that, but certainly the perception is that PF2 is the number 2 product in the market, yeah. In most conversation, well, every conversation I've ever had, Pathfinder 2 is the second mentioned after 5e. Depending on where you are, you might get references to Call of Cthulhu. I don't know anyone in real life that has ever played Call of Cthulhu. I don't think I've ever seen a physical copy of it on a shelf. But I know a lot of people say that it is very prevalent in their local area. Honestly, highly recommend just searching PF2 in the module searcher. There's so much good stuff on Foundry for Pathfinder module-wise. Absolutely, there's some real cool stuff going on in the modules. Let me have a look at what modules I've got. I think I've got all of the Battle Zoo stuff in Foundry now. I did get there's a module that allows you to do target damage. I've not played around with that yet. There's a PDF importer that allows you to take official PDFs that you've purchased from Paizo. They have to be purchased ones from Paizo because it references the code that you get with them. And you are able to take those and drag them into Foundry. And doing that will kind of pull out a lot of the automated information. I did it with, I want to say the Ruby Phoenix, the one where everyone goes into a Mortal Kombat style arena. I imported my copy of the PDF into that, I believe. Was it the Ruby Phoenix? One of them, I've imported an adventure, and now I have the whole adventure and all the maps and stuff in Foundry. It's a very cool module. But again, only works with official Pathfinder materials. Most Kickstarters for Pathfinder third-party stuff also made 5e versions of the books. Yeah, I know that No Nat Ones and the Sinclair's Library made 5e and second edition versions. There are heaps of people who play Cthulhu through Start Playing. Cthulhu, Warhammer Fantasy, Vaesen, and so on are a lot more popular in Eastern Europe, speaking from experience. When I was at a con there, a lot of D&D, but lots of those games. Yeah, that seems to be the vibe that I have picked up from kind of anecdotal stuff, has been that a lot of kind of Eastern European players play Call of Cthulhu specifically. So it makes sense from a business perspective to stick with fantasy and add a little bit of horror thrown in too. Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of really cool sci-fi games. Like, I've got a bunch of Starfinder stuff that I've had for over a year, and I really want to play Starfinder, but I am much more interested in running sci-fi than my regular gaming group, so we've not had a chance. Right, for reference, that is the size difference between the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Pocket Editions and the mainline images. So they are a fair bit smaller, and I do believe that they just shrink the whole page size down rather than reformatting the whole thing. So the Pocket Edition's much more convenient to carry around, but I personally find it easier to read the regular editions, especially because I wear glasses and my eyes are awful. Just about to start a Monster of the Week. Nice flexibility on horror versus fantasy versus sci-fi. Being able to copy paste makes it easy to make it clear what of the original rules are being referred to and modified. Yeah. Right, how are we doing for time? Any last minute questions about Pathfinder 2nd Edition stuff, throw them in the chat, and then we're going to call it a night because my battery is fully drained. So if you've not got any questions, that is fine. I am going to manually do my usual thing. So usually let's make sure we're all muted on here. Usually I press my magic button to share all the links to the stuff and things that I do, but I can't do that today because we're not on Twitch, which is where we normally stream. So if you want to support the channel and what I do, the best way to do it is over on Patreon. You get access to my monthly magazine. Every issue up until now has been OGL compatible and 5th edition compatible, and the next couple issues will probably have my backlog of 5e stuff, and then we're going to go more general fantasy and move to other systems, and maybe a bit 5e depending on how this all shakes out. But that's one of the best ways to support the channel. And then I also have a drive-through RPG store, which I will find the link to in but a moment. Maybe. We're going to press all the buttons until we find the link to it. You'd think, you know, I'm a professional. I've been doing this for a number of years. You'd think that I'd have the buttons. You'd think I'd have the buttons, but I don't. There is my drive-through RPG store. You can get individual issues of SideQuest as well as a huge amount of free and super cheap content there as well for helping you build worlds and populate your game and all that stuff. You're already here on YouTube, so if you don't already, I'd greatly appreciate you dropping me a click on the old subscribe button. We are very close to 26,000, which is amazing. We only very recently hit 25,000. So hitting 26,000 in the next couple of days would be very nice. And then just in general, anytime... Oh yeah, Discord. Thanks, Bob. There's a Discord as well. You can tell it. You can tell it's late at night because I've lost all the ability to word. We have a Discord. You can come and hang out, chat with a whole bunch of other cool people. And just in general, when you hear people talking about the OGL stuff, just remain dedicated to the we don't want to lose 1.0A, and that's our line in the sand. But other than that, I hope you've enjoyed this dumpster fire as much as you can do in these times. Go drink some water if this whole mess of the last 2 weeks has made you feel like your brain is melting through your ears, go and turn everything off and go and spend some time trying to relax, because it's an absolute nightmare at the moment. But I will see you hopefully in tomorrow's Pathfinder Getting Started video. It comes out at like 8:30 p.m. UK time. But until next time, happy gaming.